Okay na po, Doc.
Okay, so magandang umaga sa lahat. Ibalik natin sa sandali yung mga nadiskusan natin. Ang main argument talaga ng mga lunar sa Batarian ay yung kalendar natin ay na ang hindi na sang-ayon sa kalendar sa Biblia. Sapagkat para sa kanila, ang weekly cycle ay ibinabase sa new moon. So new moon talaga ang basihan lahat. Kaya yung buwan ibinabase sa new moon, yung taon, year ay ibinabase sa new moon at saka yung weekly cycle. Kaya tingnan natin kung tama ba kasi alam na naipakita natin doon sa kanila. Naipakita ko dati yung kalendaryo nila na ang new moon day is not the first day of the week, but the first day of the week must follow after the new moon day. So the second day of the month is the new moon day. New moon day. The second day of the month is the first day of the week according to their calendar. And one of their argument or one of the basis of their argument is that the when God made two great lights, the greater light and the lesser light, it says that it is made for signs and seasons. The word seasons in Hebrew is moedem, plural. Singular is moed. So if the moon is for the season and therefore Sabbath, because Sabbath is moed according to Leviticus 23 and moon is for moed, therefore Sabbath should always be based on the moon. Now, the argument I gave last time was that when we ask this lunar Sabbatarian about the first day, because you have to ask them, we will let them enter into the point where they would be in a dilemma to answer. For example, you ask them, according to your calendar, ayon sa inyong sa kalendar ninyo, alin ba ang nauna? Ang first day of the month or first day of the week? Siyempre, ang sagot nila ay yung nauna ang first day of the month kasi yung second day of the month, iyan na yon yung first day of the week. So mauna muna yung first day of the month bago ang first day of the week. So mauna yung new moon's day, the day after the new moon's day is the first day of the week. Kaya yung Sabbath nila ay every 8th, hindi 7th. 8th, 15th, 22, and 29. So hindi kasali sa weekly cycle yung new moon's day. So, kung tatanungin natin alin ba ang ayon sa kalendaryo nyo at sinabi nyo yung tunay at totoong biblical calendar ay na yung new moon's day ang pagbabasihan sa weekly cycle. So kung new moon's day ang pagbabasihan, nauna ang first day of the month kaysa first day of the week. So kung sasagot sila, alin ba ang nauna? Sang-ayon sa inyong naintindihan na ang tunay na biblical calendar is nauna yung new moon's day kaysa first day of the week. Siyempre, sasagutin nila, oo. So, binalikan ko pagtanong, alin ang una? First day of the month or first day of the week? So, ang sagot nila, first day of the month. Kasi yung second day of the month is the first day of the week. Ayon sa biblical calendar, sabi nila. So, dyan na ako papasok sa tanong. In Genesis 1, verses 3 to 5, sinasabi doon, and God said, let there be light, and there was light, and then sabi ng verse 5, and the evening and the morning were the first day. Yung first day na binanggit dyan sa Genesis account, Genesis creation, first day of the month ba yan? Or first day of the week? Diyan sila mahirapan sumagot. Kasi pag sinabi nilang first day of the month yun, so dapat nagpahinga ang Panginoon doon na sa 8th. God rested, God blessed, and God sanctified on the 7th, not the 8th. Pag sabihin din nilang it is the first day of the week, then mali yung sa kanila. Dahil sa kanilang kalendaryo, nauna yung first day of the month bago ang first day of the week. So yung first day sa Genesis 1 ay, if it is the first day of the week, then God never intended the month to be the basis of the weekly cycle. Because had God intended that the moon should be the basis for weekly cycle or determining the weekly cycle, therefore, God must have created the moon and he must have begun with the new moon, the new moon's day. Then the day after is the first day of the week. But there was no mention in Genesis that he created the moon and that the first day was the new moon's day. He immediately said, and the evening and the morning were the first day. No mention of moon. In fact, the moon was only mentioned in day 4. If moon is the basis of the weekly cycle, then the day 5 must be the first day of the week. Because that is the first day after the moon creation. But why is it that after the creation of the moon, God rested, God sanctified, and God blessed, not the 7th day from the new moon, but the 4th day from the moon? Did you get the point? When God created the moon, it was on the 4th day. If the moon was created on the 4th day and God intended the moon to be the basis and the determining point for reckoning the weekly cycle, then it should not have been on the 4th and the 3rd day after the moon, because day 7 of the creation is the 3rd day after the moon was created. Now, this is their calendar. The new moon day and the first day is day 2. Day 1 or the first day of the month is Pizza Uno, yung new moon's day. Yung Pizza Dos, yun yung first day of the week. Kaya yung Sabbath, according to them, the biblical calendar is the Sabbath should fall on every 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. In Genesis 1, they'll really have a big problem. That is why, if God really intended that the weekly cycle must be preceded, or the first day of the week must be preceded with new moon, why God did not make new moon ahead of the first day of the week? So, moon has nothing to do with the weekly cycle. That is the very important point that is established in Genesis 1. That is why God rested not on the 7th day after the moon, but on the 7th day from the first day of creation. So if the day of the new moon would precede the first day of the week, why did the Genesis mention first day without mentioning new moon? So when it mentions and the evening and the morning were the first day, without mentioning any moon. Therefore, first day is not based on the moon. God did not make new moon first before the first day in verse 5 when he created the light. New moon was only mentioned, or rather moon was only mentioned in the fourth day. So that is very, very clear. If they say that Genesis 1:1 mentions the creation of heavens and earth before the first day of Genesis 1:3-5, that according to them, new moon was already there. So when God said, in the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. If God created the heavens and the earth, they said, before the first day, because the first day says, God said, let there be light, and there was light. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Before the first day, they said, sun, moon, and stars were already there. God already created them. It was only made to appear on the fourth day. But God had already created them. Again, even if we grant that God already created the moon, the sun, the moon, and stars before the first day, because it is being debated when it says, and God said, let there be light. Is that the light from God or a light of the sun? But let us not debate on that. Even if you will grant that the sun, moon, and stars had been created long before the first day creation mentioned in Genesis chapter 1, because when it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So heavens must have included the sun, moon, and stars. Therefore, it had already existed prior to the first day creation mentioned in Genesis 1. But if God really intended the moon to be the basis of reckoning the weekly cycle, why God did not mention the moon as a basis? God did not even mention new moon as a basis. When he said, and the evening and the morning were the first day, he must have made an indication that this first day has been preceded by a new moon's day. But zero, nothing can be found. Therefore, there is absolutely no basis to say that new moon day precedes the first day of the week. There is none. If God had created the moon before the first day of the week in Genesis 1:3-5, why is it that God did not mention new moon if it is really the basis for reckoning the weekly cycle? Because it is of utmost importance to begin the first day of the week indicating first the new moon. But because absolutely there is no mention about new moon, therefore moon has no connection with the weekly cycle. Weekly cycle is totally independent of monthly cycle. Weekly cycle is also totally independent of yearly cycle. In other words, yearly cycle has nothing to do with monthly cycle and has nothing to do with yearly cycle. Monthly cycle also has nothing to do with yearly cycle, because lunar year cannot coincide with solar year. Now, how did the Jews catch up with the solar year when they used lunar year? As I have told you before, that the Jews use lunisolar calendar. They use lunar, they also use solar. How could they catch up their lunar year to solar year? As I have told you, lunar year has 355 days, 354, 355 days in a year. Because 1 month from one new moon to the next new moon only consists of 29.5 days. That is why there is what is this? There is no consistency of number of days in their month. For example, the first day of the first month in their calendar is Nisan, then followed by Iyar, followed by Sivan, followed by Ab, followed by Ilul, then followed by, Tamos rather, Sivan, Iyar, Sivan, Nisan, the first day of the month, Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz. Then Ab, Ilul, Tishri, Marchisvan, Kislev, Tibat, Shibat, Adar. Now, how could they come up with the solar year if the lunar year has only 354 or 355 days? They would use 13th month. And what is that 13th month? They call that second Adar. So the second Adar is placed when the season is already behind. Let us remember that every 14th of the first month, the month of Abib or the month of Nisan, Abib and Nisan are the same. The month of Abib, every 14th is Passover. Then on the 15th is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The 16th is the Feast of First Fruit. Part of the Feast of Unleavened Bread is first fruit. What do they do during the first fruit feast? Of course, they would, prior to that, they would, what is this? They would bind, what is this? They would bind in the field either because they have two major grains. Itong tinatawag na, kalimutan ko na. Dalawa yung grains nila eh. Yung mura at saka yung mahal. Yung, I can recall that later. So, yan yung first fruit. Aanihin nila at saka i-wave nila doon sa sanctuary. So, feast of first fruit yan. Kung sinusunod nila yung lunar year, minsan ay matatapos na ang 12th month, hindi pa hinog yung grains. Barley at saka yung isa. Yung isang grains. So barley. So hindi pa hinog. So anong gagawin nila? Para ma-catch up ang season sa solar year. Kasi yung solar year is 365 and 1/4 days. Kung lunar year ay 354 lang. So short ng 10 or 11 days. So kailangan aabot ng 3 taon. So pag pangatlong buwan ay pangatlong taon, on the 3rd year, in order for them to catch up with the solar year, they would add another extra month. They call that second Adar. That is the 13th month. Sa atin, ang 13th month ay sahod eh. Bigyan tayo ng sahod ng 13th month. Sa kanila, yung 13th month, yun yung idagdag nila na buwan para yung lunar year nila na nahuli sa solar year ay makahabol. Kasi 354, 355 days lang 1 month. Sa Solar year, ang 1 month ay 31, 30, 31, 30, 31, 30. Eh sa lunar year, ang lunar month nila ay 30, 29, 30, 29, 30, 29, 30, 29. So, kulang talaga ang bilang ng araw kung ihambin mo sa solar year. Kasi based sa moon age sila eh. Kasi lahat ng mga celebrations nila, kaya totoo, all of their celebrations, beginning with Passover, Feast of Tabernacle, Feast of Unleavened Bread, Feast of First Fruit. So, Feast of Unleavened Bread, kasali na yun dyan yung Feast of First Fruit, and then Pentecost, and then Feast of Trumpets, that is first day of the 7th month, that is Feast of Trumpet, and then 10th day of the 7th month, that is Yom Kippur, that is Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, and then Feast of Tabernacle on the 15th of the 7th month. That is 1 week celebration. Now, all of those festivals are based on the moon. But you notice, while all of those festivals are reckoned based on the moon, but there is absolutely no mention of a weekly cycle based on the moon. In fact, yearly cycle is not also based on a moon because yearly cycle has different number of days. Bungkig pa nga eh. Yung 365 and 1/4, paano mo yan ma-divide into 12? Bungkig. Paano mo rin yan i-divide into 7? Ang weekly cycle ay bawat 7. 7, then another 7, another 7. Bungkig pa rin. Yung yearly cycle, hindi masibo. Hindi mag-fit yung weekly cycle para magkaroon ng exact solar year. Kaya, ang punto natin dito, mali yung mga lunar Sabbatarian na sasabihing ang weekly cycle ay ibinabase sa new moon at saka yung yearly cycle ay ibinabase rin sa new moon. Wala. Ang sinabi ng Ten Commandments, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. And then verse 11, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth. So, the Sabbath in Exodus 28 to 11 points us back to the creation account. And the Sabbath that is mentioned in Exodus 20 has no mention of new moon. Walang binanggit na new moon. Sinabi lang, 6 days shalt thou labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath. Yung sinabing, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested on the 7th day, wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. He was pointing us back to the creation. And again, creation account in Genesis 1 and 2 has absolutely no mention about new moon. When it mentions about moon, it is on the 4th day, not a day prior to the first day of the week. So, knockout talaga yung argumento nila. So, when God said, God created the heavens and the earth, and the earth was without form and void, and God said, let there be light, and there was light, He did not tell that moon was the basis prior to the creation of the first day when it says, and the evening and the morning were the first day. So if God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, it doesn't indicate that new moon was preceded. New moon day preceded the 6-day creation. Never. So, what is their argument? What is the argument used by, what is this? The Lunar Sabbatarian. According to them, the first day of creation, when it says God said, let there be light. Prior to that, they said there was already moon, sun, and stars, but it was only made, God only made it appear on the fourth day. But I have mentioned a while ago, the word that is used is asa. It is not the word that is used that refers to appearance, which is ra'a. So that is the point. Another I have mentioned before, that if it is true that the Sabbath would always fall on the 8th after the new moon, 8, 15, 22, and 29, Joshua 5:10 to 12 would disprove that, because after the Passover is always on the 14th. Joshua mentions that after the Passover, they eat the produce. And then, after that, after the day after, so in other words, on the third day from the Passover, manna stop to fall, because manna would only be poured every and during 6 days. On the sixth day, they have to pick twice. Why twice? Because the second is intended for the Sabbath. So, the first day, they would pick manna intended for that day. Also, on the second, on the third, they would not pick in reserve for tomorrow, because it would spoil. Magiging panis yung mana. Kaya yung kukunin nila intended for that day lang. Pero sa sixth day, iba. Dalawa ang kukunin nila. Ibig sabihin, dalawang porsyon kasi i-reserve yung isa para sa Sabat. Dito, huminto yung mana 2 days after the Passover. Kaya hindi na 15th, 16th na. Kung huminto 16th, so Sabbath yun. Hindi tama yung kalendaryo nilang 15th ang Sabbath. So itong teksto na ito nag-disprove. So sinabi ito, on the 15th, tomorrow after the 15th, after the feast. So that is 16th already. The manna stop. And according to Exodus 16:26, they can pick up manna on 6 days. But on the 7th, you cannot find it. So it will stop, or it would stop. And if it stopped on the 16th, therefore, Sabbath should not or could not always fall on the 15th. But there are times that it could fall on the 16th. Therefore, their calendar is wrong. Their allegation that the true biblical calendar is that the Sabbath should always fall on the 8th, on the 15th, on the 32nd, and 29th is all wrong. Let us remember that their, what is this? Their reckoning or the weekly cycle should always reach to the 7th, which is the 7th day. And we will establish that it is not dependent on the moon or on the day, yearly cycle, or the monthly cycle. Because look at their calendar here. New moon day is not part of the week. New moon is the first day of the month, but not part of the week. There are times that the month has a 30th day. Mayroon pang 30. Kaya nga dahil 30, 29, 30, 29, kaya nagiging 29.5 average ang one new moon to the next new moon. Yun yung tinatawag na lunar month. Yung lunar month from one new moon to the next new moon. Lahat ng lunar month hindi consistent na 30 days. Lahat na lunar month hindi rin consistent na 29 days. Kaya pag isumada mo yan, kunin mo yung average, ang lunar month ay nag-average ng 29.5. Ang solar month iba. Ang solar month ay nag-average ng 30 days, higit pa. Kasi kung i-30 mo, times 12 is 360. Again, kung bawat buwan sa lunar year ay 30 lahat, kulang din. Kasi 30 times 12 is 360. Ang solar year ay 365 and 1/4. So mayroong 5 days and 1/4 na kulang. Kaya hindi pwedeng mag-average ng 30 exactly days sa solar year. Ganon din sa lunar year. Hindi rin exactly magiging 29 days or 30 days kasi bungkig din. Kaya iyan ay very strong evidence na ang weekly cycle ay totally independent of the lunar year and also of the solar year. It is totally independent of the lunar month and also of the solar month. The Gregorian calendar that we use is using the solar month. It is not dependent of the moon. Kaya kung mayroon kayong kalendaryo dyan sa inyong uh, bahay or malapit lang kayo, kung titingnan nyo, kasi yung kalendaryo namin nasa malayo sa inuupuan ko ngayon. Pero kung tingnan mo ang new moon, tingnan ko muna sandali ha. Sa buwan ng September, ayon sa Gregorian calendar, sa buwan ng September, ang new moon ay Pitsa 15. Imagine ha, Pitsa 15 sa buwan ng September ang new moon. Sa Jewish calendar, yung Pitsa 15 ay always full moon. Kasi ang new moon's day ay Pitsa 1. Dayon first quarter. Then Passover is 14th. Feast of Unleavened Bread 15th. Diyan yung full moon sa Jewish calendar, sa kanilang lunar month. Sa Gregorian calendar, tinitingnan ko yung September 15. Tiningnan ko yung new moon, September 15. Nasa kalagitnaan sa solar month. Sa lunar month, nasa kalagitnaan ng buwan, full moon yan. Full moon. Kaya malaking pagkakaiba talaga. So, kahit lunar month, hindi rin nakabase yung weekly cycle. Makita natin dito na ang new moon hindi kasali sa weekly cycle. Ang 30th, kasi yung lunar month, hindi 29 lahat. Mayroong 30th. Kaya 30, 29, 30, 29. Sa Abib, 30. Pag-iyar, 29. Sivan, 30. Tamos, 29. Ab, 30. Ilul, 29. Tishri, 30. So, yan. Iba-iba. Ano yung mga 30, 20. Pero ganito rin ang pagkakaiba. Ito ay kasi dalawa kasi yung new moon eh. May tinatawag na astronomical new moon at mayroon din tinatawag na crescent new moon. Dapat maintindihan yun. Kasi yung conjunction ng moon sa, anong tawag nito? Sa sun, in between ang moon sa sun, in conjunction, yan yung new moon. Pero walang makita, pero mayroong sliver na talagang kunting makikita mo, yun yung tinatawag na crescent new moon. Ano ba ang sa mga Hudyo? During the first century, during the time of Christ, yung mga Sanhedrin, hindi nila binabase sa calculation. Actual observation ang binabasihan nila. So, yung Sanhedrin kasi yung mag-declare na ngayon ay New Moon's Day. So, Pitsa 1 ngayon sa buwan. Sa atin ngayon, ay mayroon na tayong talagang mayroon na mga kalendar, kaya kahit 2024, 2025, magawa na yung kalendar in advance. Kasi kinalculate na lang ng mga astronomer. Ang pagkakaiba sa mga Hudyo, yung kanilang first day of the month ay hindi ma-determine dahil hindi based on calculation, but it is based on actual observation. We have to remember that, and we have to know that. It is not based on calculation, but it is based on actual observation. So, halimbawa, 29th. So, isip-isip na 29th na ngayon, baka ngayon na ang new moon. Sira ang panahon. Mayroong mag-obserbar, sira ang panahon, walang nakita kasi baga ang the cloud is thick. So nothing can be seen in the sky. And so because of that, they will not declare that day to be the new moon's day. So they will want to make it sure that they will not be making a wrong declaration. So they would make it sure that tomorrow would be declared as the new moon's day. So tomorrow, the 30th, still the weather is not good. You cannot see the moon in the sky, and you cannot see whether there is new moon or not. But regardless whether there can be seen or nothing can be seen, on the 30th, they would declare it to be the new moon's day. So that is the first day of the month. Based on actual observation, not based on calculation. Itong mga kalendaryo natin, itong Gregorian calendar natin, calculated na lahat. Nakakalculate na kailan ang new moon, kailan ang first quarter, kailan ang full moon, kailan ang last quarter, etc. Lahat calculated na lahat. So kahit in advance, 100 years in advance, makalculate na yung mga pizza sa new moon, pizza ng first quarter, pizza ng full moon, etc. Pero sa mga Hudyo, hindi nila binabase sa calculation. Ang mga Babylonian sa kanilang calendar, mayroong calculation. Yung Babylonian nga, mayroon silang intercalary year. Yung sa kanilang kalendar, kinocompute na nila kailan sila mag 13th month. Kailan sila mag 13th month. So yung kanilang 13th month is 3rd, 7th, 9th, 11th, 14th, 17th, and 19th. Yun yung 19-year cycle sa kanilang pag-determine kung kailan magkaroon ng 13th month. Kasi anong ibig sabihin ko yung 13th month? Sinabi ko second Adar. Yung second Adar ay idagdag nila para yung lunar year nila maka-catch up sa solar year. Bakit kinakailangan mag-catch up? Kasi yung lunar year ay mayroon lang 354 or 355 days. Samantalang ang solar year ay mayroon lamang mayroong 365.2422. Round off yan ng 365 1/4 days. So, behind yung lunar year. Kaya para maka-catch up yung lunar year, dagdagan nila ng 13th month para maka-catch up sa season. Kasi ang kanilang feast of first fruit ay kinakailangan during Feast of Unleavened Bread. Ay yung Feast of Unleavened Bread is after the Passover. Magka-problema sila kung paano mag-first fruit, 12th month na. Pag 12th month na, hilaw pa yung aanihin. Hindi pa dapat maani. Paano? So magdagdag sila ng 13th month. Kasi para maka-catch up sa season ng yearly cycle. Tinatawag nating solar year. So ganyan yan. At least nagka-idea kayo sa kalendaryo in comparison with the calendar that we now have. Kaya actual observation yung new moon nila. Ang new moon nila ay, kasi sinabi ko, mayroong astronomical new moon at saka mayroong crescent new moon. Crescent talaga, pag mayroong kunting bagli sa moon na makita, yun yung new moon's day. I-declare yun ng Sanhedrin na today is the new moon's day kasi actual observation. Pero kung yung ang panahon ay hindi maganda, walang makitang buwan, madilim ang langit dahil hindi maganda yung weather, 29th na, pagka 29th, sa isip-isip nila, 29th, dapat siguro ngayon, new moon na. Pero walang nakita. Para makatiyak, 30th. Hintayin nila pagka 30th. Pagka 30th, makita na nilang new moon. Pero kung wala pa rin makita dahil sira ang panahon, walang makita sa heavens na hindi maliwanag, walang makitang palatandaan, walang moon makita, i-declare pa rin nila na that is the first day of the month. That is new moon day. So ganyan yan sa mga Hudyo. So as I have said, the weekly cycle is totally independent of the moon. The weekly cycle is all totally independent of the yearly cycle. They are all independent entities in cycle. Yearly cycle, monthly cycle, and weekly cycle. Sinabi ko na God did not make any command to gather manna if their calendar is correct. Think of this. Their calendar is New Moon Day. New Moon Day is not part of the weekly cycle. So their 29th is the Sabbath. 28th is the 6th day. So on the 28th, they have to gather manna. Double for the 29th. If their calendar is correct, what will they eat on the 30th and on the new moon day? There is really a big problem. Look at this. If the 28th is the 6th day and the 29th is the Sabbath, they have to gather manna on the 28th double. But if it falls on a month where there is a 30th, and after the 30th, it is followed by the new moon day, which is Pitsa Uno. At pagkatapos ng Pitsa Uno, saka na ang first day of the week. Dito na i-pour out again yung mana. I-4 na araw, nagsunod-sunod. Ay ang nahanda nila, ang pinick up nila 28. Dalawa on the 28 para hanggang 29. Ano ang kakain nila sa 30th at sa New Moon Day? Wala namang sinabi ang Panginoon. Sa huling araw ng buwan, mag-gather kayo 4. 4 on the 6th day, at saka yung isa pang Sabbath, pang isa yung pang 30th, at yung isa pang New Moon. Kasi on the first day of the week na naman ako magbigay ng mana. Walang sinabing Biblia. Kaya maling-mali yung doktrina nila. Sabi ng Exodus 16:26-29, on the 6th day, kukuha kayo ng mga mana. 6 days. But on the 6th, sa ika-6 na araw, kukuha kayo twice. That is for that day and for the following day, which is the Sabbath. So, look at this calendar. By looking at this calendar, you'll notice that on the 28th, they have to pick up twice. Intended up to 29 because 29 is the Sabbath. What will they eat on the 30th and on the New Moon Day? Because it is in pizza dos. Sa karpa, magbibigay ng mana ang Panginoon. Kasi 6 days magbibigay ang linggo ay from 2 to 7. Ang 8 na yung Sabat, kaya 8, 15, 22, 29 yung Sabat nila. Kaya maling-mali ang doktrina nila kasi walang makikita na they were commanded by God to pick 4 on the 28th in reserve for the 29th, which is Sabbath, for the 30th, and for the new moon day. Kasi mana will fall again or will fall again on the pizza dos, which is the first day of the week. Kaya hindi talaga magiging totoo yung deklarasyon nila or yung doktrina nila. And then the feast of the weeks or feast of weeks, yun yung Pentecost. If their calendar is correct. I mean, if their allegation or if their doctrine that the Sabbath must always fall on the 8th, on the 15th, on the 22nd, and 29th, based on the moon, there will be a big problem with the reckoning of the Pentecost because it will be interrupted. There will be no continuity of weekly cycle because on the last week, it will be interrupted with the 30th and with the new moon's day. Now let us read Leviticus 23:15 and 16. In Leviticus 23:15 and 16, the instruction concerning Pentecost is very clear. Let me read 15 and 16. And you shall count for yourselves from the day after the Sabbath. Again, you shall count for yourselves from the day after the Sabbath. After the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be completed. So what is this? 7 weeks. So 7 times 7 is 49. Then in verse 16 it says, count 50 days to the day after the 7th Sabbath. So on the 49th, which is a Sabbath, what follows is the 50th, and that is the Pentecost. That's why Pentecost falls on a Sunday. I mean, falls on a first day of the week. Because the 50th would fall after the 7th Sabbath, and that is the 49th. If their calendar is correct, then the Pentecost would not fall on the day as instructed because the cycle of the weeks are interrupted by the 30th and the new moon day. So magkaroon ng problema. If it says, count 50 days after the 7th Sabbath. Look at this. If this is the calendar, counting starts for the 7 weeks. So pizza 1, ito. Pizza 2, pizza 3. Now, if the month has a 30th, because the lunar month has an alternate of 30, 29, 30, 29. Now, if the month falls on there is in that month a 30th, look at that. Ang pizza 14 is 29, pizza 15 is 15. If you continue, then new moon's day is 16, 17. What would happen is that on the 44, the 29 is 44. Now, Pentecost would fall on a 6th day after the new moon. It cannot coincide with the text that says, count 50 days to the day after the 7th Sabbath. So what is the 7th Sabbath? That is the 49th. 7 times 7, 49. 7th Sabbath, ikapitong Sabado, ikapitong sa araw ng pamahinga. After the 7th Sabbath is Pentecost. That is the first day of the week. What would happen if their calendar is correct? Then the Pentecost would not fall after the 7th Sabbath. Hindi. Kasi yung 49 is 5th from the new moon. Kaya, disprove kaagad yung doktrina nila. Pero kung tuloy-tuloy ang kalendaryo, tuloy-tuloy is not interrupted with 30th and the new moon's day. Tingnan nyo. First day of the week. So the 7th Sabbath, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 7th Sabbath here. So the 7th Sabbath, the 7th day of the week. Then after that is the Pentecost, pang 50. Kasi yung Pente means 50. So yung Pentecostes, pang 50. Kaya maliwanag na ang kalendaryo talaga ng mga Hudyo, ang kalendaryo ng Israel ay hindi nakabase sa new moon. Kasi kung nakabase sa new moon yung weekly cycle, let me make it clear. If their weekly cycle is based on the moon, then sira yung Pentecost. Dahil yung Pinti means 50, the 50th would not fall after the 7th Sabbath. Bungkig. Kaya ito ay isang ebidensya, mabigat na ebidensya, na yung kalendar na sila sabi nilang yun yung kalendar sa Biblia ay hindi tama talaga. Hindi. Sunod, alamin natin na ang mga ceremonial Sabbats, mayroong mga ceremonial Sabbats. Yung Pentecost, hindi yun ceremonial Sabbath. Yung first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread is a Sabbath. The 8th day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread is also a Sabbath. Dalawa na. Yung Pentecost, hindi yung Pentecost. Pentecost, Sabbath din yun. Yung Feast of Trumpet, first day of the 7th month, Sabbath din yun. Then, Day of Atonement, Sabbath din yun. Then, yung first day of the Feast of Tabernacle, Sabbath din yun. And then, yung 8th day of the Feast of Tabernacle is another Sabbath. That's why they have 7 ceremonial Sabbats. Itong mga Sabbats na ito ay talagang nakabase sa moon. Pero kung titingnan mo, yung weekly Sabbath, is not tied to that ceremonial Sabbats. Yung ceremonial Sabbats is always based on the moon. But the weekly Sabbath is independent of the moon. We will see it by and by. So, when it says that every week there is always 7th day every week, let us remember that Yom Kippur could fall within a week. It is a Sabbath that it would fall within a week. Even New Moon's Day would fall within a week. We will prove that later on. Okay, let us look at the Passover feast. Passover is always on the 14th day of the first month, Leviticus 24:5. The Feast of Unleavened Bread on the 15th day of the first month. And then the 7th from the 15th of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is the 22nd day, Leviticus 23:8. This is the third yearly Sabbath. The Feast of Trumpet is the fourth yearly Sabbath. It is the first day of the 7th month. So it's based on the moon again. The Day of Atonement is the 10th day of the 7th month. It is based on the moon, but it does not fall on the 7th day Sabbath. Sometimes it could fall because lunar cycle is independent of the weekly cycle. We will later see it in the presentation. So the Feast of Tabernacle on the 5th day is the 15th day of the 7th month. Also on the 8th day of the Feast of the Tabernacle is also a Sabbath. That's why there are 7 Sabbats. There are 7 ceremonial Sabbats, but there are 6 feasts. Yung feast, yun yung sinabing muedem. Again, let me recall to you their argument that the Sabbath, they said, is muedem. And in Psalm 119, moon is for muedem. That's why their conclusion is 7th-day Sabbath should always be based on the moon. But we will refute that later on. It says in Leviticus 23:3, 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of solemn rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work on it. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings. This refers to the 7th-day Sabbath. This is very clear. Leviticus 23:3 refers to the 7th-day Sabbath. So very clear that the feast is not tied to the weekly Sabbath. Again, if 29th is always the 7th-day Sabbath and the 30th is not part of the weekly cycle, New Moon Day, which is Pizza Uno, is not also part of the weekly cycle, then Pizza Dos now is the first day of the week. So, the 2 extra days, the 30th and the New Moon Day, which are not part of the weekly cycle is a big problem of the picking up of manna. It is a big problem because there are 2 days that they have nothing to eat because they were only commanded to pick on the 6th day twice. But on the 4th week, if their calendar is true, then it is not true because there will be problem on the 30th and on the first day of the month, the new moon day. There is no provision in the text. God did not tell them on the 4th day of the week. I mean the 4th day of the week. On the 4th week, on the 6th day of the 4th week, God must have said, on the 6th day of the 4th week, you have to gather quadruple. Why not double only? You have to gather quadruple because there is a provision for the Sabbath, there is a provision for the 30th, and there is a provision for the new moon day because manna will fall again on the first day of the week. So there are days that are not part of the week, like the 30th and the first day. God did not give them a provision to pick additional for that day. Therefore, because of a total absence of God's instruction to pick quadruple on the 6th day of the 4th week of the month, because of the absence, therefore their calendar, their proposed Bible calendar is all wrong. So, the lunar month has an average of 29.5 days. As I have told you over and over again, the lunar month has an average of 29.5 days from one new moon to the next new moon. In a week, there are 7 days. 4 times 7 is 28. If one lunar month has 29.5, so there is 1.5 bungkig na araw. Ano ba yan sa Tagalog yung bungkig? Extra na araw para...
Butal-butal.
Ha? Kaya maliwanag na yung moon or lunar month, I mean yung weekly cycle, is totally, absolutely independent of a lunar cycle. Kasi kung dinesign pa ng Panginoon na ang weekly cycle ay swak na magiging kabahagi ng lunar cycle, sana ang ginawa ng Panginoon, ang duration ng one new moon to the next new moon is 28 days only. So, ang isang buwan ay hindi dapat, ang isang lunar month ay hindi dapat 29.5 days or hindi rin 30 days. Kasi yung 4 na linggo ay 28 days lang. In a week, 7 days. 7 times 4, 28. Ang lunar cycle ay from one new moon to the next new moon, 29, minsan 30. So mayroong extra 2 days or an average of extra 1.5 days. Isa at kalahati na araw. Bungkig talaga. Saan mo ilagay yung 1.5 days? Kasi patuloy yung cycle ng weekly cycle. After the 7th day, susunod ang first day of the week. After the 7th day, susunod ang first day of the week. After the 7th day, susunod ang first day of the week. Sa kanilang kalendaryo na sinabi ng biblical calendar, yung pang-4 na linggo, hindi susundan ng first day of the week. I mean, yung pang-4 na Sabbath, hindi masundan ng first day of the week. Dahil pizza 30, hindi yun sa first day of the week. Yung new moon day na susunod ng pizza 30, hindi rin first day of the week. Doon ra sa pizza 2 yung first day of the week. Kaya, this is the statement that we could confidently declare. The weekly cycle is totally independent, has totally nothing to do with the weekly cycle. Because the weekly cycle would only, in a 4 cycle of a week, would only constitute 28 days. Pag gawin mo ng pang-5 cycle, hindi na 28 days. Magiging 35 days na. So, wala, bungkig rin. Ang isang buwan, kahit sa solar month. Ang solar month, 31, 30, 31, 30, 31, 30, 31, 30. Sa September ay 30, October 31, November 30, December 31. So 31, 30, 31, 30. Eh hindi rin sa solar year or solar month. Itong ginagamit nating month ay solar month. Ang sa Biblia, lunar month. Pero yung weekly cycle, walang anumang koneksyon either sa monthly cycle at sa yearly cycle. That monthly cycle could be lunar month or could be solar month. That yearly cycle could be lunar year or could be solar year. That is very, very clear. I hope all of you get what I am presenting. So, here is the first day of the week, Pizza Dos. Pang-apat na linggo, 29th, the fourth week of the month, there is a problem because on the 28th, which is the preparation day for the Sabbath, according to their calendar, 29th is the Sabbath. So 8, 15, 22, 29. So 28 is the preparation day. Double lang ang ipakuha nila sa mana. Hindi nagsabi ang Panginoon, on the fourth week of the month, you have to quadruple. Bakit quadruple? Para sa 29, para sa 30, at para sa New Moon Day. Kasi yung mana ay ibuhos na naman sa pizza dos, yung nilagay kong green. So, again, hindi magiging totoo yung doktrina nila. O, tingnan mo ito. If the 22 is the Sabbath, so the first day of the week is the 23rd. So the seventh day of the week is the 29th. Paano yung 30th, which is the 8th day, at saka yung new moon? Yung first day of the week ay pizza dos na. So ilang araw yun? Ito ba matawag ay week? Shabua sa Hebrew? Shabua is 7. Ito ay 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 1. Ilang araw? Siyam. Hindi simana yan. Hindi yan linggo. Kaya walang-wala talaga sa Biblia yung sinabi nilang totoong biblical calendar. Tingnan natin ang sinabi ni Ellen White. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 11. Sa baba, makikita niyo sa baba. Like the Sabbath, the week originated at creation and it has been preserved and brought down to us through Bible history. It mentions of successive weeks. Yung successive weeks ay talagang tuloy-tuloy, walang interruption to the close of time. So God had designed that the week He established in creation cycle ay para sa successive weeks. It says there, like every other, it consisted of 7 literal days. Spirit of Prophecy, Volume 186. On the 7th day of the first week, God rested from His work and then blessed the day of His rest and set it apart for the use of man. The weekly cycle of 7 literal days. Yun yung the 7th for rest, which has been preserved. Preserved talaga ng Panginoon. Kaya yung weekly cycle, tuloy-tuloy yan. After the 7th day, first day. After the 7th day, first day. Yung doktrina nila, yung pang-apat na 7th day, magkaroon ng problema. Kasi yung pang-apat na 7th day ay hindi sinundan ng first day. Kasi 30th. Sinundan pa rin ng New Moon's Day. Hindi pa rin yung first day of the week. Kaya, salungat yan sa sinabi ni Ellen White. Itong mga lunar sa batalyan, naniniwala kay Ellen White. Pero dito, igong-igo, matatamaan sila talaga sa sinabi nito ni Ellen White. Spiritual Gifts, Volume 3, page 90. This is what Ellen White said. I was then carried back to the creation and was shown that the first week in which God performed the work of creation in 6 days and rested on the 7th day was just like every other week. So the great God in His day of creation, blah, 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 measured off the first cycle. Look at that. The first week on creation is measured off as the mission of the first cycle as a sample for successive weeks in the close or to the close of time. Ibig sabihin, hanggang babalik ang Panginoon, itong weekly cycle uninterrupted, will remain uninterrupted. Walang makatigil. Ibig sabihin na yung 7th day ay hindi mo na masundan ng first day kasi mayroon pang new moon. Maputol yung pagsunod ng first day of the week kasi mayroong mag-interrupt na pizza 30 at mayroon pang mag-interrupt na new moon. Ay wala. Salungat sa sinabi ni Ellen White, it will continue to be in successive until the close of time, hanggang sa ating panahon ngayon. Sinabi ng Merriam-Webster ng dictionary ng ibig sabihin ng successive is following each other without interruption. Walang interruption. Yung sa kanila, kalendaryo, mayroong interruption. Bakit? Okay lang sa first week. Okay lang sa second week. Kasi yung 7th day ay sinundan kaagad ng first day of the week. Yung second week, sinundan rin ng first day of the week yung 7th day. Yung third week, sinundan rin ng first day of the week. Pero yung fourth week, hindi na sinundan ng first day of the week yung 7th day. Kasi ma-interrupt siya sa pizza 30 at ma-interrupt siya sa New Moon's Day. Ano sinabi ng dictionary din about consecutive? Sinabi ay following one another in an interrupted succession. The keyword is uninterrupted. Kaya talagang mali yung doktrina nila sa ipresent nilang Bible calendar at sinabi nilang sumusunod tayo sa pagan calendar kasi ito yung biblical calendar, ito yung tamang Biblia ito yung tamang kalendaryo ng Diyos. Ang pagano gumagawa ng kalendar, sinusunod ito ng mga Seventh-day Adventist, sinusunod ang kalendaryo ng Seventh-day Adventist ay kalendaryo ng pagano. Tingnan natin mamaya. Sabi niya, the weekly cycle of 7 days, 7 literal days, 6 for labor. Sabi niya, selected spiritual gifts, volume 3, page 90. The weekly cycle of 7 literal, 6 for labor, and the 7th for rest, which has been preserved and brought down through Bible history. So Ellen White said, that is why when I presented this statement to whoever I have encountered with this Lunar sa Batarian, kahit yung founder nila na Miko, mahirapan siya mag-refute itong, kasi uunahan ko pagtanong, do you believe in the gift of prophecy? They said, yes. Do you believe Ellen White as having been given or bestowed with that gift of prophecy? They said, yes. Naniniwala kami kay Ellen White. Babasahan ka sila dito. Ito sinabi ni Ellen White. Wala, mahirapan silang magsagot, mahirapan silang mag-explain, kaya ipatipas ka nila sa ibang issue, puntahan ka. Kaya sabi ko, oops, huwag muna pumunta dyan. Sagutin mo itong sinabi ni Ellen White. Ito sinabi niya, brought down through Bible history, originated in the great facts of the first 7 days. When was that first 7 days? That is in Genesis 1 and 2. Genesis 1, that is the first 7 days. And that is uninterrupted. So, this is what Ellen White, because they said, the Sabbath that we keep is not the Bible Sabbath, because the Sabbath that we keep is the 7th day of the pagan calendar, not the 7th day of the Bible calendar. Now, let us see what Ellen White had said. Great Controversy 65. He said, among the leading causes that had led to the separation of the true church from Rome was the hatred of the latter toward the Bible Sabbath. Now, Ellen White is talking about the Bible Sabbath. What did she mean by the Bible Sabbath? The lunar Sabbath? The Sunday Sabbath? Or the Saturday Sabbath? Of course, very clear. She referred it to the Saturday Sabbath, not a lunar Sabbath, nor a Sunday Sabbath, but a Saturday Sabbath, which is the 7th-day Sabbath. As foretold by prophecy, the papal power cast down the truth to the ground. Amid the prevailing error and superstition, many, even of the true people of God, became so bewildered that they didn't observe the Sabbath. They renamed from labor also on the Sunday. So the Bible Sabbath, the issue here of Ellen White is a Seventh day Sabbath versus the Sunday Sabbath. And the Bible Sabbath that Ellen White referred to is the Saturday Sabbath, not the Sunday Sabbath. This is what again Ellen White had said. In the 17th century, there were several Sabbatarian churches in England, while there were hundreds of Sabbath keepers. This is referring to the Bible Sabbath, not the Sunday Sabbath. Sabbath keepers is scattered throughout the country. Now, when is this? 17th century. Question: is there a record of Sabbath keepers in the 17th century keeping a lunar Sabbath? When we say lunar Sabbath, Sabbath that is based on the moon, there is none. So when Ellen White mentions Sabbath keepers, she meant the Saturday Sabbath. She said, less than half a century after the landing of the Pilgrims at Plymouth, the Sabbath keepers of London sent one of their number to raise the standard of Sabbath reform in the New World. This missionary held that the Ten Commandments as they were delivered from Mount Sinai are moral and immutable, and that it was the anti-Christian power which sought to change times and laws, blah, blah, blah. So from the seventh day to the first day. So Ellen White mentions about the change of the Sabbath from seventh day. What is the seventh day that she referred to? The Saturday. To the first day. What is that first day? Sunday. So Ellen White, being guided by the Holy Spirit, if we believe that she has been bestowed with a gift of prophecy, she must not be wrong in saying that the Sabbath that the 17th century reformers keep is the Sabbath that we now keep still. And the Sabbath that we now keep is called Saturday. So the Sabbath that had been kept by the reformers during the 17th century were also Saturday keepers, not a Sunday keeper. So the change was made from Sabbath to Sunday. It is very clear. So the issue between the false or spurious Sabbath, which is, according to Ellen White, the spurious Sabbath is Sunday, versus the true Sabbath in the last days, strongly indicate that the Sabbath that the HDAs now observe is the same seventh-day Sabbath originated in Eden. In Review and Herald,
Amen.
1893, it says, through the agency of the man of sin, which is the papacy, men have been led to exalt Sunday where the Sabbath of the Lord alone should be exalted. So what is being contrasted by Ellen White is between Sabbath and Sunday, or Saturday versus Sunday. It's not Sunday versus lunar Sabbath. It is Saturday the seventh day versus Sunday the first day. Because lunar Sabbath could fall on any day of the Gregorian calendar. That is why if you observe this lunar Sabbatarian, you can find many lunar Sabbatarian in Luzon, in Visayas, and in Mindanao. In Zamboanga, there is, I heard, lunar Sabbatarian. Here in Marbel or Coronadal, there are also lunar Sabbatarian. In Agusan del Sur, there are lunar Sabbatarian. If you will observe them, they keep, if this week is their lunar Sabbath every Monday, next month their lunar Sabbath is every Tuesday. The following month, their lunar Sabbath is every Wednesday. So there is no permanent day of the seventh day because they all depend on the new moon. A new moon change from one month to the next month if you refer it to the Gregorian calendar. So their weekly Sabbath, which is lunar Sabbath, is if this month Monday, the next month would be every Tuesday. The following month would be every Wednesday. Then another month would be every uh, Thursday. Then Friday. then Saturday. So there is no permanent day of their lunar Sabbath. If you are an employee, there is a great problem. Lunar Sabbatarian would only be okay if you are a businessman because you can choose a day of your rest according to your lunar Sabbath. If you are a fisherman and if you are uh, an agriculturist or if you are a farmer. But if you are an employee, whether government or private, you will have problem with your Sabbath because their Sabbath, lunar Sabbath, could fall on a Monday. And I think you will be terminated if you will not work on a Monday or Tuesday. This week, every Monday. Next week, every Tuesday. I tell you, you will have problems. So that is the very impracticality of the lunar Sabbath if you will rest it or if you will observe it in our time. Now again, Ellen White said, Satan put his interpretation upon events, and they think as he would have them, that the calamities which fill the land are a result of Sunday breaking. Now here is the prophecy that Ellen White is talking about. These calamities that are taking place, they would blame it on the of not giving sacredness of the Sunday because it is being violated. So the calamities now that are taking place in frequent succession, and Ellen White has prophesied about this. You notice there is always a problem of calamities from all parts of the world in succession. And where did they blame these calamities? The problem is on climate change. And what is the solution of the Pope concerning climate change? He has a specific solution in his encyclical letter, Laudato Si. In his Laudato Si, 237, very clear. One of the solutions of the climate change is Sunday. And now here is Ellen White stating that they would blame that these calamities are the result of Sunday breaking. That's why they are proposing zero carbon, low carbon Sunday. There is proposal of Zikaso, zero carbon Sunday. That's why there is plenty of promotion about zero carbon Sunday or free Sunday. Now, this is what Ellen White said, thinking to appease the wrath of God, these influential men make laws enforcing Sunday observance. Why is there a need of Sunday observance? Because Sunday is violated. They are not giving reverence to Sunday. Why? Because of these calamities. The reason for this succession of calamities, very high frequency of calamities, is the Sunday breaking. And so there is now influential men to appease the wrath of God. They would propose for Sunday observance. This is what Ellen White said. They think that by exalting this false rest day higher and still higher, compelling obedience to the Sunday. Again, why am I pointing this out? Because in the final issue, it's between the true Sabbath and the false Sabbath. The false Sabbath is Sunday. The true Sabbath is Saturday. It's not between false Sabbath, Sunday, versus true Sabbath, lunar Sabbath. It's not lunar Sabbath, but it's Sunday versus Saturday. She called Sunday as the false rest day or the spurious Sabbath. Oh, higher and still higher, compelling obedience to the Sunday law, the spurious Sabbath. They are doing God's service. They think that when they impose Sunday law, they are doing God's service. It says here, those who honor God by observing the true Sabbath. What is the true Sabbath? It is the seventh-day Sabbath, which is in the Gregorian calendar, it is labeled as Saturday. So it is a contrast of Sunday versus true Sabbath. It says here, those who honor God by observing the true Sabbath are looked upon as disloyal to God, when it is really those who thus regard them who are themselves disloyal. Because this Sabbath, what is this? Originated in Eden. In Eden, there is no mention of new moon. It mentions of the seventh day, it mentions of the first day, but there is no mention of new moon as the basis of the reckoning of that week. There is no absolutely mention of new moon. And Ellen White said it originated in Eden. So the Edenic Sabbath is the seventh day Sabbath, which is not based on the moon. So the final issue of the last days, the very reason to implement Sunday observance, because of these calamities. And God is angry with men because they violated, they desecrated Sunday. Ellen White said it is a result of Sunday breaking. So it is an issue between Sunday and Sabbath. It is not an issue of Sunday and lunar Sabbath, but it is the Edenic Sabbath, which is the seventh day, not based on the new moon. I think that is very, very clear. So again, in Great Controversy 574, the royal mandate not proving a sufficient substitute for divine authority, Eusebius, a bishop who sought the favor of princes and who was the special friend and flatterer of Constantine, advanced the claim that Christ had transferred the Sabbath to Sunday. Again, this is not referring to the lunar Sabbath, but the seventh day Sabbath, which is Saturday, because during the time of Eusebius, the calendar that they use is Julian calendar. And the Julian calendar in comparison with the Gregorian calendar is the same calendar as far as the weekly cycle is concerned. So when Ellen White mentions about during the time of Constantine and during the time of Eusebius, when there was a transference of the Sabbath from Sabbath to Sunday, it is referring to the Edenic Sabbath. It is referring to the Sabbath that Jesus kept. It is referring to the Sabbath that the apostles kept. It is referring to the Sabbath that up to the time of Eusebius, up to the time of Constantine, the Sabbath that had been kept by the Christians is not a lunar Sabbath. When you say lunar Sabbath, Sabbath that is counted 8th day from the moon, from the new moon. So not a single testimony, Ellen White said, of the scriptures was produced in proof of the new doctrine, which is the Sunday Sabbath. Again, Ellen White said in Testimonies Volume 1, 35335, I saw that God will, in a wonderful manner, preserve his people through the time of trouble. Now, this is talking about the last days. Time of trouble. There is little time of trouble prior to the close of probation. That is during Sunday law, of course. Then, the great time of trouble, of course, Sunday law will continue, but that will be after the close of probation. It says here, Jesus poured out his soul in agony in the garden. They will earnestly cry and agonize day and night for deliverance. The decree will go forth that they must disregard the Sabbath of the fourth commandment and honor the first day. So it's again Sabbath versus Sunday, Saturday versus Sunday, or lose their lives. So when there is a death decree, that will be the at the second plague of the seven last plagues. But they will not yield and trample under their feet the Sabbath of the Lord and honor an institution of papacy. Institution of papacy is Sunday. The Sabbath of the Lord is the Saturday Sabbath in the Gregorian calendar, which is the seventh-day Sabbath, in contradistinction with the institution of the papacy, which is the first day of the week. Look at this again. If Ellen White believed in the lunar Sabbath, here is what Ellen White said. The Savior was buried on Friday. Friday is the Gregorian calendar. During the time of Ellen White, the calendar that she used or that they used was the Gregorian calendar, not a lunar calendar. Ellen White said again, the Savior was buried on Friday, the sixth day of the week. Again, in Review and Herald, May 8, she said, all needful preparation for the Sabbath should be made on Friday. Again, manuscript release 104 point, paragraph 3. Friday is the day on which we are to prepare for the Sabbath. She made it very clear that there is nothing wrong with the Gregorian calendar because she recognized Friday as the preparation day. Friday is the 6th day of the Gregorian calendar. Friday is the 6th day of the Julian calendar. The calendar during the Roman during the Roman Empire. The calendar that they use is Julian calendar. Of course, it was according to Julius Caesar. You remember Julius Caesar? Julius Caesar was succeeded by Augustus Caesar. Then, followed by Tiberius Caesar. Christ was born during Augustus Caesar, not during Julius Caesar. In other words, prior to Christ's birth, Julius Caesar, Julian calendar already existed prior to Christ's birth. Now, Christ's ministry fall during Augustus Caesar and Tiberius Caesar because Augustus Caesar was succeeded by Tiberius on the 14th, but there was co-regency in the 12th, AD 12. That is one of the solution of the conflict between 31 AD as the crucifixion year as in comparison with the 33 AD as the crucifixion year of the Catholic what is this? Catholic citation of the year. So, in our diagram, Christ's death or Christ's crucifixion was on the 31 AD. 31 AD. But on the Catholic what is this calendar, a calendar of events, Christ was resurrected, crucified on 33 AD, as stated in the Encyclopedia Britannica, Encyclopedia Americana, and many other encyclopedia. They would point out 33 AD. Now, let me go back to what Ellen White said. Friday is the 6th day of the week. Friday is the day named in the Julian calendar and also of the Gregorian calendar. Therefore, the calendar that they recognize as the 7th day. Now, we will also look whether the 7th day Sabbath would fall on a Saturday. Let us remember that the Jews had their calendar. They have lunar month, but they would also adjust to solar year by adding 13th month or second Adar because their 12th month is Adar, followed by 13th month. So, first month is Nisan or Abib, followed by Iyar, then Sivan, Tammuz, Ab, Elul, Tishri or Ethanim, then Marchiswan, then Tishlib, then Tibit, Shibat, Adar. The 13th is second Adar to coincide with the solar year because they would use lunar year but short of solar year, short of celebrating the feast of first fruit every first month of the 15th of the first month, which is Abib or Nisan. There was already a calendar of Rome, Julian calendar, prior to the birth of Christ. Of course, Jews had different months. In fact, the Julian month or the solar year, theirs is exactly 365 and 1/4, meaning 365.25 days in a 1-year cycle. Why was there a need to change it to become Gregorian calendar? Because it is not exactly 365.25 or 1/4, but 365.2224, not 0.25. So, mayroong dikil, mayroong kunting dikil. Say, pagligad ng more than 1,000 years, behind na ng 10 days. Kaya, pinalukso. kaya nagkaroon ng Gregorian calendar. But the weekly cycle is the same weekly cycle during the time of Christ. Imagine, Christ was born during Augustus Caesar and he ministered during Tiberius Caesar. He was crucified during Tiberius Caesar. The calendar that was used by Roman Empire at the time was the Julian calendar. When Ellen White recognized Friday of the Julian calendar and of the Gregorian calendar as the sixth day of the week, therefore, Ellen White is recognizing the sixth day of Julian calendar and Gregorian calendar as the sixth day of the week as observed by God's people in the Bible and even by the apostles. That is very clear. Again, Ellen White said that Friday is the sixth day of the week. Friday is the day of preparation. It should be devoted to thinking and doing and conversing upon things necessary. Ellen White said, preparatory to the Sabbath, that nothing should be left unsaid or undone to be said and done upon the Sabbath, which will in the sight of heaven be regarded as a violation of the sacredness of the Sabbath. It is very clear. So, while preparation for the Sabbath is to be made, again, this is another statement. She said, Friday, the day prior to the Sabbath. I will not elaborate this anymore because I have already established my point. Now, let us go to the Mishnah and Talmud. This Mishnah and Talmud are Jewish authoritative documents. And their documents would prove against lunar Sabbath. Here is it. In the Jewish virtual library.org, it says here, both Hillel and Shammai, of course, there are two schools among the Jews, the Hillel and the Shammai. The Shammai is very strict, while the Hillel is quite, liberal. It says here, both Hillel and Shammai lived during the reign of King Herod. Imagine that. King Herod up to 37-4. This King Herod was the one who ordered for the killing of all the infants. Of course, Christ was able to escape. It says here, an oppressive period in Jewish history because of the Roman occupation of the land of Israel. So there was already an existence of this calendar. And during the time of King Herod, the emperor was Julius Caesar. And he was the one who was the proponent of that calendar known as the Julian calendar. It says here in Wikipedia.org, Hillel and Shammai were two leading sages of the last 1st century BCE, meaning before Christ, and the early 1st century, that is during Christ, who founded opposing schools of Jewish thought known as the House of Hillel and House of Shammai. The debate between the schools on matters of ritual practice, ethics, and theology was critical for the shaping of the oral law and Judaism as it is today. Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai, meaning Bet means house of Hillel, and House of Shammai, are the two major schools of exposition of oral law that existed from the 1st century BCE, meaning prior to the birth of Christ, to the 2nd century. So around 300 years. Talmudic tradition lists over 350 disputes or controversies between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel. But we will notice here that their Sabbath would fall on the Saturday of the Julian calendar. Again, the Mishnah was an early form of the Jewish oral law. I will skip on that. So, the new moon is different from a festival. Now, let us look at what the Talmud has said. Okay. The Talmud says the new moon is different from a festival. Since its mention is included in the benediction on the sanctity of the day in the morning and evening prayers, it is also included in that of the additional prayer. But do Beth Shammai uphold the view that the mention of the new moon is to be included? Was it not in fact taught? Now here it is. If a new moon falls on a Sabbath, Beth Shammai ruled, one recites in his additional prayer 8 benedictions. And Beth Hillel ruled 7. This is indeed a difficulty. In other words, Did you remember their calendar? Their proposed calendar? They said the biblical calendar according to the lunar Sabbatarian, mga Adventist nga mga lunar Sabbatarian. They said new moon is not part of the weekly cycle. Meaning, from first day to the seventh day, new moon does not fall within those days. But here is the declaration of the Talmud. It says, if a new moon falls on a Sabbath, if you look at your calendar, the Gregorian calendar, there are times that new moon would fall on Saturday. There are times. There are times that new moon would fall on other days. In other words, the weekly cycle being observed by the Jews, in fact, clearly stated in the Talmud, clearly contradicts with the position being held now by the Lunar Sabbatarian. Because to them, new moon could not in any way fall on weekdays, meaning from first day to the seventh day. But here is very clear. New moon could fall on a Sabbath. Therefore, new moon or weekly cycle is independent from monthly cycle. So the reckoning of one new moon to the next new moon is independent and has nothing to do with the weekly cycle, because new moon could fall on any other day. It could also fall on a Sabbath day, and it is a very clear statement here from Talmud. Here, look at their new moon. It's not part of the weekly cycle. The 30th does not also fall in any weekly cycle. So, based on the Talmud, it strongly disproves their position. Again, in the Mishnah, here is what the Mishnah says. In Pisakim 83a, the bones and the sinews and the nothar of the Paschal lamb are to be burnt on the 16th. If the 16th falls on the Sabbath, now again, 14th is Passover. Passover is the 14th day of on the month of Nisan, or what is this? Abib. Abib is the first day of the month. 14th is Passover. 15th is the feast, the starting point of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The 16th is the Feast of First Fruit. It says here, if the 16th falls on the Sabbath, according to their calendar, 16th always falls on a first day of the week. Again, according to their proposed calendar, which they said is the lunar Sabbath calendar or the Bible Sabbath, they said 16th falls always on the first day of the week. Because you remember, 8, 15, 22, 29 is always the Sabbath as a lunar Sabbath based on the new moon. But here is what the Mishnah had said. If the 16th falls on the Sabbath, so in other words, lunar calculation has nothing to do with weekly calculation. Lunar cycle has nothing to do with weekly cycle. That is very clear. So this document of Mishnah strongly disproves their position of, they said, Bible Sabbath, which is lunar Sabbath. Again, in Mishnah, Talmud Minakot 103, it says, let me just read the underlined portion. Okay, let me one. But if you said, I take upon myself to offer 61 tenths, he must bring 61 one vessel and the one in another vessel for sins. The congregation bring on first day of the Feast of Tabernacles when it falls on a Sabbath. Now, again, Feast of Tabernacle happens on the seventh month of the lunar year. What is the 7th month? That is Tisri or Ethanim. The first day of the first month, the 7th month is Feast of Trumpet. The 10th day of the 7th month is Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. But the 15th is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Feast of Tabernacle up to the 22nd. Here is what it says. On the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Now, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, according to their calendar, proposed lunar calendar, if it is on the 15th, it falls on the 7th-day Sabbath. But it says here, on the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, Feast of Tabernacles, when it falls on a Sabbath, again, this strongly disproves their teaching that the Feast of Unleavened Bread, Feast of Tabernacle, which is the 15th, does not always fall on a Sabbath because it says when it falls. In other words, the Feast of Tabernacle does not always fall on the Sabbath because there are only times that it could fall on a Sabbath. Very clear from the Talmud. So, by looking at this, here, the Feast of Tabernacle falls on the 15th. Let me read. Leviticus 23. It says here in Leviticus 23 about the Feast of Tabernacle. It says, speak to the children, verse 34, speak to the children of Israel, saying, the 15th day of the 7th month, meaning month of Tisri, the 15th day of the 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles. According to their calendar, the 15th day of the 7th month is the Sabbath. If it is true that every 15th is always the Sabbath, then why is it that the Talmud, Mishnah, says that on the first day of the Feast of Tabernacle, when it falls on the Sabbath, therefore it does not always fall.
Ang kuan, wale, murag 26 na.
So, it's almost 1 o'clock. Let me finish. Is it okay to present until 1 o'clock? It says here, let us go to the astronomers. Or we will continue this meeting because we will again prove from the astronomers that the lunar Sabbath doctrine is wrong. And then next presentation, we will refute their texts, their strongest text to prove that lunar Sabbath is the true Sabbath of the Bible. We will again refute that next presentation because time would not suffice us to present that at this point in time because in my watch it's 1:45 and I think many of us have not eaten our lunch. So next meeting I will present the astronomical presentation, I mean the refutation contradicting their claims of lunar Sabbatarian based on the astronomers. And then okay, I now give the time to turn over the time to the host. Okay, we will continue next meeting. I understand many of you are hungry already. So we will continue next meeting from the astronomer's point of view and we will refute all their texts in support of the doctrine. We will refute their texts. That their texts are not actually proof of their position.
Ang libyan ko ba?
Wala.
Okay, salamat po, Doc. Doc, pa-unmute po. Napindot yung mute. Doc. Doc Perral, na-mute po. Na-mute ka po.
Hello.
Okay. Okay,
Hello, hello.
okay po, Doc. Sa next Sunday naman.
Okay, okay. Sige, thank you very much.
Okay. Napakaganda po ng talakayan, mga kapatid. At we'll have a short break. By 1 o'clock, balik tayo for lunch po muna tayo. Pagka 1 o'clock, another presentation will be coming from Ma'am Ramak if she's around.